You disgusting people make me sick! Madison Wright slaps Diana Washington hard across the face. Diana staggers back, her cheek burning red from the blow. I don't care who you think you are, Madison snarls, her voice dripping with venom. This is my cabin, and trash like you doesn't belong here. Diana touches her stinging cheek, tasting blood from her bitten lip. Passengers gasp and pull out phones. Did you just... Diana whispers, her voice shaking. I sure did. Madison steps closer, her face twisted with hate. And I'll do it again if you don't learn your place, you worthless piece of... Ma'am, please. An elderly passenger interrupts. Madison whirls around. Stay out of this. Someone needs to teach these people respect. The first-class cabin falls silent except for the sound of recording phones. Diana stands frozen, documents scattered at her feet, her dignity shattered in front of strangers. What Madison didn't know was that she had just slapped her own boss and destroyed the one person who had been secretly helping her family survive. But let's rewind to 2 hours earlier to understand how this nightmare began. The chrome and glass terminals of Chicago O'Hare International Airport buzz with the familiar chaos of Tuesday morning travel. Business people roll their luggage through crowded corridors while the smell of coffee and pastries drifts from airport cafes. Gate announcements echo overhead, mixing English and Spanish in the multicultural symphony of modern air travel. A sleek black town car pulls up to the departure curb. Diana Washington steps out, her charcoal business suit perfectly tailored, her leather portfolio clutched confidently in her manicured hands. At 38, she moves with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms and high-stakes decisions. The crisp October air carries the scent of jet fuel and exhaust as she strides toward the terminal. Thank you, Marcus, she tells her driver, slipping a generous tip into his palm. Same time Thursday for the return flight. Inside the terminal, Diana navigates security with practiced ease. The TSA agent barely glances at her identification before waving her through the pre-check line. Her phone buzzes constantly with messages about quarterly reviews and board meeting preparations. One text catches her attention from her assistant. Anonymous Education Fund payment processed, $2,500 to A. Wright Educational Trust. Diana smiles softly and types back, Perfect. Keep it confidential as always. Meanwhile, across the airport in the crew briefing room, Madison Wright adjusts her navy blue uniform and pins her name badge to her chest. The fluorescent lights highlight the tired lines around her 42-year-old eyes. Her blonde hair is pulled back in the regulation style, every strand in place according to company standards. Flight 447 to Atlanta is fully booked this morning, announces Captain James Reynolds, a 55-year-old veteran pilot with salt and pepper hair. Weather looks good, so we should have a smooth flight. Madison barely listens to the briefing. Her mind is on the stack of bills waiting at home and her 8-year-old son Aiden's upcoming school fees. The private academy costs more than she makes in 3 months, but somehow an anonymous scholarship covers most expenses. She's written countless thank you letters to the mysterious benefactor, never knowing the recipient's identity. Right, you're on first-class service today, the crew chief announces. Keep an eye on passenger 1A VIP booking. Madison nods, already feeling the familiar resentment building. VIP passengers meant extra work and entitled attitudes. In her experience, they were usually diversity hires or affirmative action cases who didn't deserve their positions. Tyler Jenkins, a 24-year-old junior flight attendant with eager eyes and nervous energy, approaches Madison. Miss Wright, should I handle the beverage service in coach while you... I'll handle first class myself, Madison cuts him off. These passengers need proper supervision. The subtext hangs heavy in the recycled air. Tyler has worked with Madison long enough to recognize her coded language. He's filed informal complaints about her behavior, but somehow they always disappear into the company bureaucracy. 30 minutes before departure, passengers begin boarding Flight 447. The Boeing 737, 800 aircraft sits gleaming on the tarmac, its white fuselage reflecting the morning sun. Inside, the familiar smell of disinfectant and recycled air greets each passenger as they find their seats. Diana boards early thanks to her elite status, settling into seat 1A with her usual efficiency. She pulls out her tablet and reviews the quarterly performance reports that will dominate today's board meeting. Her phone shows 17 missed calls from board members, 3 interview requests from aviation industry magazines, and a reminder about her 3 o'clock appointment with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. As CEO of Apex Airlines for the past 3 months, Diana has inherited a company plagued by discrimination complaints and toxic workplace culture. The previous management team systematically ignored bias incidents, creating an environment where prejudice flourished unchecked. Today's flight to Atlanta will take her to meet with the lawyers handling 47 pending discrimination cases. Madison enters the first-class cabin and immediately spots Diana. Something about the sight of this well-dressed black woman in seat 1A triggers a familiar rage. In Madison's worldview, shaped by years of resentment and financial struggle, successful minorities must have cheated or manipulated the system. The idea that they might have earned their positions through merit never crosses her mind. She watches Diana type on her expensive tablet, noting the designer handbag, the gold jewelry, the confidence that radiates from every gesture. Madison's jaw tightens as familiar thoughts race through her mind. Another one who thinks she's better than us. Another one taking opportunities from hardworking Americans. The stage is set for a collision between 2 worlds, one built on earned success and quiet dignity, the other poisoned by jealousy and learned hatred. The soft chime of the boarding completion signal fills the cabin as Madison Wright begins her approach to seat 1A. Her regulation shoes click against the aircraft floor with deliberate authority. The morning light streaming through the windows illuminates her blonde hair as she positions herself directly in front of Diana Washington. "Ma'am, I need to verify you're in the correct seat." Madison's voice carries the false sweetness of customer service laced with suspicion. First-class tickets are quite expensive. Diana looks up from her tablet, her dark eyes meeting Madison's blue ones with calm professionalism. "Of course, here's my boarding pass." She extends the document, but Madison doesn't take it immediately. Instead, she studies Diana's face with obvious skepticism, her gaze lingering on every detail as if searching for evidence of deception. "Where exactly did you purchase this ticket?" Madison asks, finally accepting the boarding pass. Her fingers handle it like contaminated evidence. These premium seats aren't usually accessible to everyone. The coded language hangs in the recycled air. Diana recognizes the microaggression immediately but maintains her composure. "I purchased it through the company travel department. I fly this route weekly for business." "Business." Madison repeats the word with barely concealed disdain. "What kind of work do you—" "Strategic consulting," Diana replies smoothly, though her jaw tightens imperceptibly. Madison's eyes narrow as she examines the boarding pass under the overhead light. "This seems unusual. I need to double-check the manifest for irregularities." She makes a show of walking to the galley, her voice deliberately loud enough for other passengers to hear. "Control, this is right on flight 447. I have a passenger situation that needs verification in first class." Mr. Harrison Blackwell, a 65-year-old white businessman in seat 1B, shifts uncomfortably. He's witnessed this routine before on other flights and recognizes the pattern. Tyler Jenkins, preparing beverages in the galley, catches Madison's eye and shakes his head slightly, but she ignores him. Madison returns with exaggerated authority. "Ma'am, there seems to be some confusion about your accommodations. Sometimes people get mixed up about their seating assignments." "There's no confusion," Diana says quietly, her phone buzzing with messages. "I'm properly seated." "Don't get defensive with me," Madison snaps, her customer service mask slipping. "I'm just following company policy to ensure all passengers are where they belong." The emphasis on belong cuts through the cabin like a blade. Several passengers begin to pay attention, sensing the tension building in the confined space. Madison spots Diana's designer handbag and briefcase, her resentment growing. "That's quite an expensive collection you have there. Interesting spending priorities." "Excuse me?" Diana's voice remains level, but ice creeps into her tone. I'm just saying some people have very particular ways of affording luxury items." Madison's smile turns predatory. "Makes you wonder about their methods." Tyler approaches nervously. "Miss Wright, perhaps I could help with—" "I can handle this, Jenkins." Madison waves him away dismissively. "This passenger and I are just having a conversation about proper procedures." She turns back to Diana with renewed aggression. I need to inspect your carry-on luggage. Security compliance, you understand? My bag was already screened at security, Diana points out reasonably. Airport security isn't airline security, Madison counters, reaching for Diana's briefcase without permission. I need to verify you're not carrying anything inappropriate. Diana firmly but politely pulls her briefcase away. I don't consent to an unauthorized search. Consent? Madison's voice rises sharply. You people always think rules don't apply to you. I have the authority to inspect any suspicious passenger's belongings. The racist dog whistle is now a foghorn. Mr. Blackwell clears his throat loudly. Miss, this seems unnecessary. Madison whirls toward him. Sir, I'm handling a security situation. This passenger is being uncooperative and potentially disruptive. I'm simply trying to work, Diana says, gesturing to her tablet displaying financial reports. I have important meetings today. Important meetings. Madison's laugh is sharp and bitter. Let me guess. Some diversity committee position? Affirmative action consultant? That's how your kind usually gets these fancy jobs. The cabin falls silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Several passengers pull out their phones, instinctively sensing they're witnessing something significant. Diana's hands clench slightly, but her voice remains steady. My professional qualifications speak for themselves. Do they? Madison leans closer, invading Diana's personal space. Because from where I stand, it looks like another case of someone playing the system. Someone who thinks being a victim gives them special privileges. Tyler tries again to intervene. Miss Wright, Captain Reynolds is asking about our departure delay. Tell the captain we have a passenger compliance issue, Madison snaps. Some people need to learn that the first class has standards, real standards. She turns back to Diana with vicious satisfaction. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in coach with the other budget travelers. I'm sure there's an empty middle seat somewhere in the back where you'd fit in better. I paid for this seat, and I'm staying in this seat, Diana says firmly, her professionalism finally showing cracks. Paid how? Madison's voice drips with insinuation. Credit cards can be so unreliable these days, especially when people live beyond their means. The accusation of financial fraud hangs in the air like toxic smoke. Diana's eyes flash with anger, but she forces herself to remain calm. I'd like to speak with your supervisor, Diana says, reaching for her phone. Madison's hand shoots out and grabs Diana's wrist. Put that phone down. Personal calls are not permitted during boarding procedures. Let go of me, Diana says quietly, her voice carrying a warning that Madison is too blinded by prejudice to recognize. I'll let go when you start following instructions, Madison hisses. Your kind always thinks you can do whatever you want, but this is my cabin. My rules. Diana carefully extracts her wrist from Madison's grip, her movements controlled despite the fury building behind her eyes. You just made a very serious mistake. Did I? Madison straightens to her full height, drunk on her perceived power. Because from where I stand, you're just another entitled passenger who thinks skin color gives them special treatment. The racist mask has completely fallen away. Madison's true beliefs stand naked and ugly in the fluorescent cabin light. Ma'am, Mr. Blackwell says more forcefully, this has gone too far. Madison rounds on him with feral intensity. Has it? Or are you just another bleeding heart who thinks these people deserve things they haven't earned? She turns back to Diana with triumphant malice. I know exactly what you are. Another diversity hire who thinks crying racism will get them whatever they want, but not on my flight, not in my cabin. Diana stands slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. At 38, she's learned to navigate racism with dignity, but Madison's escalating aggression is testing every limit of her patience. I'm going to ask you one more time to step back and allow me to make a phone call, Diana says, her voice carrying quiet authority that makes several passengers sit up straighter. Madison laughs, a harsh sound that carries no humor. You can ask all you want, but I'm the authority here, not you. And I say you're going to sit down, shut up, and accept your place. The confrontation has reached a breaking point. Diana's phone buzzes with another urgent message, but Madison blocks her from accessing it. That phone stays down until I say otherwise, Madison snarls. People like you need to learn respect for authority. Real authority, not the fake kind you're used to. The tension in the first-class cabin crackles like electricity before a storm. Madison Wright's face flushes red with righteous anger as she positions herself between Diana and the aisle, effectively trapping her in seat 1A. The sweet smell of Madison's perfume mingles with the recycled air, creating a suffocating atmosphere of confrontation. "You're not going anywhere until we resolve this situation," Madison declares, her voice rising to a pitch that carries throughout the cabin. "I've dealt with your type before, and I know all the games you people play." Diana's fingers tighten around her phone as another urgent message lights up the screen. The device vibrates insistently against her palm, but Madison's imposing presence blocks any attempt to answer it. "That phone is a distraction from our conversation," Madison says, lunging forward to snatch the device from Diana's hands. "Personal calls violate federal aviation regulations during boarding." "Give that back immediately," Diana says, her professional composure finally cracking as she stands to reclaim her property. Madison clutches the phone like a trophy, her blue eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. "Not until you learn some manners. This is what happens when people like you think rules don't apply to them." The phone continues buzzing in Madison's grip, messages flooding the screen from contacts labeled Board Chairman, Legal Department, and Emergency Only. Madison glances at the notifications with growing confusion, but her prejudice blinds her to their significance. "Looks like someone's very important," Madison sneers, holding the phone just out of Diana's reach. "Let me guess, affirmative action supervisors checking up on their quota hire?" Tyler Jenkins approaches cautiously, his young face creased with worry. "Miss Wright, perhaps we should—" "Jenkins, if you interrupt me one more time, you'll be looking for a new job," Madison snarls without taking her eyes off Diana. "This passenger needs to understand her place before we can proceed." The junior flight attendant backs away, his hands shaking as he witnesses the escalating abuse. Several passengers have their phones out now, recording the confrontation with a growing alarm. Madison turns back to Diana with renewed venom. "Now let's discuss your credentials for sitting in first class, because frankly, I find your story hard to believe." "My credentials are none of your concern," Diana replies, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "Everything is my concern on this aircraft," Madison shoots back, "especially when suspicious passengers try to access premium services they clearly can't afford." She gestures dramatically at Diana's designer suit and jewelry. "All this fancy equipment doesn't fool me. I know desperation when I see it. How much debt are you carrying to maintain this facade?" The accusation hits like a physical blow. Diana's hands clench into fists at her sides as Madison continues her verbal assault. "Let me paint you a picture," Madison continues, circling Diana like a predator. "Single mother, probably. Baby daddy ran off when things got tough. Now you're struggling to keep up appearances, using credit cards and maybe even other methods to fund this lifestyle." "You don't know anything about me," Diana says through gritted teeth. "Don't I?" Madison's laugh is sharp and cruel. "I know your type better than you know yourself, always looking for handouts, always playing the victim when called out on your behavior." Mr. Blackwell can no longer remain silent. "Young lady, this is completely inappropriate." Madison whirls on him with feral intensity. "Inappropriate, you know what's inappropriate. Special treatment for people who haven't earned it. Diversity quotas that put unqualified candidates in positions they don't deserve." She turns back to Diana with growing hysteria. "How many qualified white candidates lost opportunities so you could check some corporate diversity box? How many better qualified people got passed over for your promotion?" The racist venom pours out like poison, 15 years of resentment and bigotry finally finding its target. Diana's professional mask begins to crack as the assault on her character intensifies. "I earned every position I've ever held," Diana says, her voice trembling with controlled fury. "Earned?" Madison's voice reaches a shriek. "The only thing your people ever earn is sympathy points for playing the race card. Everything else is handed to you on a silver platter." Captain Reynolds finally emerges from the cockpit, his weathered face showing irritation at the delay. "What's going on out here? We should have pushed back 10 minutes ago." Madison immediately shifts into victim mode. "Captain, this passenger is being disruptive and uncooperative. She's refusing to follow basic safety instructions and making threats." "That's absolutely untrue," Diana says, her composure returning as she addresses the pilot. "This flight attendant has been harassing me with racist comments and physical intimidation." "Racist?" Madison gasps with theatrical outrage. "How dare you? I'm colorblind. I treat everyone equally. You're the one bringing race into this situation. She turns to Captain Reynolds with practiced innocence. Sir, this is exactly what I was talking about. When people like this get called out on their behavior, they immediately cry racism. It's their standard playbook. The captain looks between the two women, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but uncertain how to proceed. Years of avoiding conflict have left him ill-equipped to handle this explosive confrontation. Perhaps we can all just calm down and... He begins weakly. There's nothing to calm down about, Madison interrupts. I'm simply doing my job, maintaining safety and order in this cabin. If this passenger has a problem with that, she's welcome to take the next flight. Diana's phone continues buzzing in Madison's hand, the screen lighting up with increasingly urgent messages. One notification reads, "Emergency board meeting, CEO presence required immediately." Madison glances at the message and laughs derisively. CEO presence required? What kind of fantasy role-playing is this? Do you actually believe your own lies? Give me my phone, Diana demands, her voice carrying an authority that makes several passengers look up sharply. Not until you explain these ridiculous messages, Madison taunts, scrolling through the notifications. Board meetings? Executive decisions? Who are you trying to fool with this elaborate charade? Tyler Jenkins recognizes something in Diana's tone and pulls out his company tablet. His fingers fly across the screen, accessing the corporate directory with growing urgency. Madison continues her psychological assault, oblivious to Tyler's research. Let me guess, you've convinced some gullible company to hire you as a diversity consultant, another made-up job for people who can't handle real work. You have no idea what you're talking about, Diana says, her patience finally reaching its breaking point. Don't I? Madison steps closer, invading Diana's personal space with aggressive body language. I've seen dozens of your kind over the years, always demanding special treatment, always claiming discrimination when you don't get your way. The smell of Madison's breath mingles with her perfume as she leans in menacingly. Well, not on my watch, not in my cabin. You're going to learn what real accountability looks like. Tyler's tablet screen shows a corporate profile that makes his face go pale. He tries to catch Madison's attention, but she's too focused on her victim to notice his increasingly frantic signals. This ends now, Madison declares with final authority. You're going to apologize for wasting everyone's time, accept a coach seat assignment, and learn to appreciate the opportunities this country has given you. She holds Diana's phone above her head like a prize, her face twisted with triumphant malice. And if you don't like it, you can walk back to whatever welfare office spawned you. The insult hangs in the cabin air like toxic smoke. Every passenger can feel the confrontation reaching its explosive climax as Diana rises to her full height, her eyes blazing with controlled fury. Give me my phone right now, Diana says, her voice carrying a quiet authority that makes the cabin fall silent. Make me! Madison snarls, her racist mask completely discarded. Show everyone what you people are really like when you don't get your way. The challenge echoes through the first-class cabin as two worlds collide, one built on earned success and dignity, the other poisoned by ignorance and hate. The next few seconds will change everything. Diana Washington reaches for her phone with deliberate calm, her movement causing Madison to jerk the device higher above her head like a schoolyard bully. The morning light streaming through the aircraft windows catches the gold of Diana's jewelry as she extends her hand. I'm asking you one final time to return my property, Diana says, her voice carrying an undertone of authority that makes several passengers sit up straighter. Madison's face contorts with sadistic pleasure. And I'm telling you one final time that you don't give orders here. People like you need to learn respect for authority. Respect for authority? Diana's eyebrow arches slightly. That's interesting because you're about to learn what real authority looks like. Madison laughs harshly, the sound grating against the cabin's recycled air. Real authority? From someone who probably got her job through diversity quotas? Don't make me laugh. Diana steps forward, her designer heels clicking against the aircraft floor with measured precision. The movement is so controlled, so confident, that Madison instinctively takes a half-step backward. Miss Wright, Diana says, and something in her tone makes Madison's name sound like a formal declaration. You have just made the most catastrophic mistake of your career. Have I? Madison sneers, but uncertainty flickers in her blue eyes, because all I see is another entitled passenger who thinks she can intimidate working people. Tyler Jenkins frantically waves his tablet from the galley, his young face pale with growing horror. "Miss Wright!" he calls out urgently. "Miss Wright, you need to see this!" Madison ignores him completely, too drunk on her perceived power to notice the warning signs around her. Mr. Blackwell shifts uncomfortably in seat 1B, his businessman's instincts recognizing something significant in Diana's demeanor. "Working people?" Diana repeats thoughtfully. "Is that what you call terrorizing passengers with racist abuse? Is that your definition of work?" "I don't see color," Madison spits. "I just see someone who doesn't belong in first class trying to cause trouble." Diana reaches into her jacket pocket with fluid grace, extracting a business card that catches the overhead light. "Since you're so interested in my qualifications, perhaps you'd like to see my credentials." She extends the card toward Madison, who snatches it with greedy curiosity. The flight attendant's eyes scan the text, and the color slowly drains from her face like water from a broken dam. That's impossible," Madison whispers, the business card trembling in her fingers. The embossed lettering reads clearly. "Diana Washington, Chief Executive Officer, Apex Airlines." Tyler Jenkins finally reaches them, his tablet clutched in shaking hands. "Miss Wright, I tried to tell you. That's our CEO. She was appointed 3 months ago." The revelation hits the cabin like a physical force. Passengers lean forward in their seats, phones capturing every moment of Madison's dawning horror. Captain Reynolds' jaw drops as he recognizes the implications of what has just unfolded. "No," Madison breathes, shaking her head in frantic denial. "This is some kind of trick, some kind of fake identification." Diana retrieves her phone with calm authority, Madison too shocked to resist. "Tyler, please call security to meet us at the gate. Miss Wright has just assaulted the chief executive officer of this airline." "Assaulted?" Madison's voice cracks. I was following protocol. I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't care to know," Diana replies with quiet steel. "You saw my skin color and decided that was all the information you needed." The business card flutters to the floor as Madison's hands shake uncontrollably. Around them, passengers murmur in amazement and vindication, their phones capturing every moment of the power reversal. "This flight will be delayed while we address this incident," Diana announces to the cabin, her voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to command. "I apologize for the disruption caused by this employee's behavior." Madison scrambles to retrieve the business card, studying it desperately for signs of forgery. But you can't be... how was I supposed to know?" "Perhaps by treating all passengers with basic human dignity," Diana suggests coldly. "Perhaps by not assuming someone's qualifications based on their race." Captain Reynolds approaches with visible alarm, his weathered face showing the panic of a man who realizes his career might be ending. "Miss Washington, I had no idea. If I had known you were aboard..." "Captain, your lack of intervention while your employee terrorized a passenger speaks volumes about the culture on this aircraft," Diana says, her words cutting through the recycled air like surgical instruments. Tyler Jenkins stands frozen, his tablet displaying Diana's corporate profile photo. The image shows the same woman now standing before them, but in the professional headshot, she wears the confident smile of someone comfortable with power. "Ma'am," Tyler stammers, "I'm so sorry. I tried to stop her, but..." "You tried, Tyler. That's more than anyone else did." Diana's tone softens slightly for the young man who showed courage in an impossible situation. Madison's world crumbles around her as the reality sinks in. I have a son," she whispers desperately. "I need this job. I didn't mean... I was just doing what I thought was right." "What you thought was right," Diana repeats, her voice carrying the weight of 15 years of discrimination complaints. "Tell me, miss..." "Right. Before we continue, is there anything else you'd like to know about my qualifications?" The question hangs in the cabin air like a blade, promising revelations that will cut even deeper than what has already been revealed. Diana Washington's phone buzzes in her hand as she scrolls through her contacts with deliberate precision. The cabin falls into complete silence, broken only by the distant hum of baggage carts on the tarmac below. Madison Wright stands frozen, her face ashen as the magnitude of her mistake continues to sink in. "There's something else you should know before security arrives, Miss Wright," Diana says, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to boardroom decisions. "Something about your son, Aiden." Madison's blue eyes widened with sudden terror. "My son? What about my son? How do you know his name?" Diana's fingers tap across her phone screen, accessing financial records with practiced efficiency. "For the past 2 years, Aiden has been attending Riverside Academy on a full scholarship. Anonymous donor, all expenses paid." "The scholarship," Madison whispers, her voice barely audible above the aircraft's ventilation system. "Someone's been paying for his school." "Someone has been ensuring your son receives the best education possible," Diana confirms, her tone remaining professionally neutral. "Someone believed every child deserves opportunity, regardless of their parents' beliefs." Madison's legs suddenly feel weak, and she grabs the nearest seat back for support. The smell of recycled air and cleaning products seems to intensify as her world tilts on its axis. "You?" Madison's voice cracks with disbelief. "You've been paying for Aiden's education?" Diana nods slowly, watching Madison's face cycle through shock, confusion, and dawning horror. 2 years of tuition, books, uniforms, field trips. Every anonymous thank you letter you wrote went to my desk. The irony cuts through the cabin like a blade. Passengers lean forward in their seats, their phones capturing every moment of this devastating revelation. Tyler Jenkins covers his mouth with his hand, understanding the full scope of the tragedy unfolding before them. But you're... Madison stammers, her racist worldview colliding with undeniable reality. "Black?" Diana finishes coldly. "Yes, Miss Wright. The person you just assaulted has been quietly ensuring your son's future for 2 years." Madison sinks into the nearest empty seat, her uniform wrinkled and her blonde hair escaping its regulation style. The business card lies forgotten on the floor between them, Diana's title catching the fluorescent light. "I don't understand," Madison whispers. "Why would you help us? We're not... people like you don't usually..." "People like me," Diana repeats, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You mean successful black women who believe in education and opportunity?" The racist assumptions pour out even now in Madison's moment of complete defeat. Tyler Jenkins shakes his head in amazement at her inability to recognize her own prejudice, even when confronted with kindness. Diana continues with surgical precision. "Every month when you struggled to make ends meet, wondering how you'd afford Aiden's school fees, I made sure they were covered. When you wrote those grateful letters to the anonymous donor, thanking them for believing in your son's potential, you were writing to me." "Oh, God," Madison breathes, the color draining completely from her face. "Oh, God, what have I done?" "You've shown your son's benefactor exactly who you really are," Diana replies without mercy. "You've demonstrated that racism is more important to you than gratitude, more valuable than your child's future." Captain Reynolds approaches cautiously, his weathered face showing the strain of witnessing this confrontation. "Miss Washington, security is standing by. How would you like to proceed?" Diana's phone shows 17 missed calls from board members and urgent messages about the quarterly meeting, but her attention remains focused on Madison's complete breakdown. "Effective immediately, Madison Wright is terminated from Apex Airlines," Diana announces, her voice carrying to every corner of the first-class cabin. "Security will escort her from this aircraft." "No!" Madison pleads, desperation creeping into her voice. "Please, I need this job. I have a son to support. I didn't know who you were." "You didn't know because you didn't care to know," Diana responds. "You saw my skin color and decided that was sufficient information to justify your behavior." The sound of footsteps on the jet bridge announces security's arrival. 2 uniformed officers board the aircraft, their presence immediately commanding attention from every passenger. "But the scholarship," Madison whispers frantically. "What about Aiden's school?" Diana's expression hardens into something approaching absolute zero. "The scholarship was contingent on the recipient's family maintaining basic standards of human decency. You've just forfeited your son's education along with your career." "You can't punish my son for my mistakes," Madison cries, but her words echo hollow in the confined space. "I'm not punishing Aiden. Diana corrects coldly. You are. Your choices, your consequences. The security officers reach them, their professional demeanor barely containing their surprise at finding themselves arresting a flight attendant for assaulting a CEO. 8 months later, the mahogany-paneled courtroom in downtown Chicago feels heavy with anticipation. The morning sun streams through tall windows, casting long shadows across the gallery packed with reporters, civil rights advocates, and airline industry executives. The smell of polished wood and old law books mingles with the tension that fills every corner of the federal courthouse. Madison Wright sits at the defendant's table, her once pristine appearance now showing the wear of months of legal battles and unemployment. Her blonde hair has lost its salon shine, and her discount store blazer contrasts sharply with the expensive suits surrounding her. Dark circles under her eyes speak of sleepless nights and mounting bills. Judge Patricia Hernandez, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and piercing brown eyes, reviews the case file with methodical precision. The weight of federal civil rights law rests in her experienced hands as she prepares to deliver justice. The defendant will rise, Judge Hernandez announces, her voice carrying the authority of 3 decades on the bench. Madison stands on shaking legs, her court-appointed attorney offering no comfort beside her. Behind her in the gallery, Diana Washington sits with quiet dignity, surrounded by her legal team and members of the airline industry press corps. Madison Wright, Judge Hernandez begins, her tone cutting through the courtroom silence like a blade. You have been found guilty of assault and battery against a corporate executive, violation of federal civil rights statutes, and abuse of your position of authority. The investigation that followed the incident had revealed a pattern of discrimination spanning Madison's entire 15-year career. 47 complaints filed by minority passengers, all mysteriously dismissed by the previous management team. Audio recordings from previous flights captured similar racist tirades. Federal investigators uncovered training materials that coded discriminatory practices as maintaining standards. Your actions on Flight 447 represent not merely personal failing, but institutional racism that has poisoned our transportation system, the judge continues, her words echoing off the courtroom's walls. The evidence shows a systematic pattern of targeting passengers based on race, using your position of trust to humiliate and terrorize innocent travelers. Madison's defense attorney had argued for leniency, citing her status as a single mother and her own difficult upbringing in a household steeped in prejudice. Character witnesses testified about her struggles and financial hardships, but the prosecution's case proved overwhelming. Video evidence from passenger phones showed the assault in crystal clarity. The racist language was undeniable. Most damaging of all was Madison's complete lack of remorse throughout the trial process. Even now, Miss Wright, you show no genuine understanding of the harm you've caused, Judge Hernandez observes, studying Madison's defiant posture. Your testimony revealed continued adherence to racist beliefs, a complete inability to accept responsibility for your actions. The prosecution had presented testimony from dozens of Madison's victims over the years. An elderly black minister was humiliated during a flight to his grandson's graduation. A young Latina businesswoman was forced to produce multiple forms of identification while white passengers boarded freely. A black military veteran questioned about his right to sit in first class despite his Purple Heart and combat decorations. This court sentences you to 24 months in federal prison, Judge Hernandez declares, her words falling like hammer blows. Additionally, you will pay $75,000 in fines to civil rights organizations, perform 1,000 hours of community service in diverse communities, and accept permanent prohibition from employment in the airline industry. Madison's composure finally cracks completely. She sobs openly as the bailiff approaches with restraints, her racist bravado replaced by the reality of consequences she never imagined possible. Furthermore, the judge continues, this court finds your actions represent a clear and present danger to public safety. Your abuse of authority while in a position of trust over airline passengers cannot be tolerated in a civilized society. Diana Washington watches from the gallery with no satisfaction, only the grim recognition that justice sometimes comes at a terrible cost. Her quarterly reports show that Apex Airlines has been completely transformed in the months since the incident. Customer satisfaction ratings have increased 350%. Zero discrimination complaints have been filed. The company has become the industry leader in diversity and inclusion practices. The federal investigation that followed Madison's arrest had revealed the toxic culture that enabled her behavior. 3 senior managers were terminated for systematically ignoring discrimination complaints. The FAA mandated bias intervention training for all airline personnel. Congressional hearings led to new federal legislation protecting passengers from discriminatory treatment. The impact of your actions extends far beyond this courtroom, Judge Hernandez addresses Madison directly. Your assault on Miss Washington sparked nationwide reforms that have made air travel safer and more equitable for millions of Americans. Media coverage of the case has been extensive and unforgiving. The video of Madison slapping Diana has been viewed over 20 million times across social media platforms. Civil rights organizations have used the incident as a rallying cry for broader transportation reforms. Madison has become a symbol of workplace racism and its consequences. Your son, Aiden, the judge continues, her voice softening slightly, represents the true tragedy of this case, an innocent child whose educational opportunities were destroyed by his mother's choices. Madison looks up sharply at the mention of her son, tears streaming down her face. The 8-year-old boy now lives with relatives who struggle to counter the racist ideology she taught him. His scholarship was indeed terminated, forcing him into an underfunded public school where he struggles academically and socially. Diana had quietly established a scholarship fund for children affected by racist parents, but Aiden's case proves too complicated. The boy parrots his mother's hateful language, making integration into diverse educational settings nearly impossible. The court recognizes that Miss Wright's racist beliefs were learned, passed down through generations of prejudice and ignorance, Judge Hernandez observes. But that explanation does not excuse her actions or diminish their impact on innocent victims. The prosecution's impact statements had been devastating. Dozens of passengers testified about the lasting psychological damage caused by Madison's treatment. Several changed their travel habits entirely, avoiding air travel rather than risk similar humiliation. This sentence reflects not only the severity of your crimes, but the need to send a clear message that racism has no place in American workplaces. The judge concludes. Your choices have consequences, Miss Wright. Today, you face those consequences. As bailiffs escort Madison from the courtroom in handcuffs, her sobs echo through the gallery. Diana Washington remains seated, her expression unreadable as justice is finally served. The case has become a landmark in civil rights law, cited in training materials across multiple industries. Madison Wright's name will forever be associated with the consequences of workplace racism, a cautionary tale of how hatred ultimately destroys those who embrace it. 2 years after the slap that changed everything, Diana Washington stands in her corner office overlooking Chicago's skyline. The afternoon sun filters through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting warm light across the awards and commendations that now line her walls. The smell of fresh coffee mingles with the leather scent of her executive chair as she reviews Apex Airline's latest quarterly reports. The transformation has been nothing short of remarkable. Customer satisfaction ratings have soared to industry-leading levels. The company has been named Most Inclusive Airline by 3 separate civil rights organizations. For the first time in its corporate history, Apex Airlines has achieved both profitability and perfect diversity scores simultaneously. The numbers don't lie, Diana says, addressing the camera with quiet confidence. When you eliminate discrimination and embrace every passenger's dignity, everyone wins. Our revenue has increased 40% since implementing comprehensive bias training. Across town, Madison Wright finishes her shift at a community warehouse, her orange safety vest damp with sweat from loading trucks. The federal prison experience has left its mark. Her blonde hair now shows gray roots, and deep lines etch her face. At 44, she works for minimum wage while drowning in legal debt and social isolation. Even after 2 years of mandatory counseling, Madison's worldview remains largely unchanged. She blames Diana for ruining her family rather than accepting responsibility for her own choices. The racist beliefs that destroyed her life continue to fester, a cautionary tale of hatred's self-destructive power. 10-year-old Aiden Wright struggles in his overcrowded public school, his academic performance declining steadily since losing his private education. The innocent victim of his mother's choices serves as a heartbreaking reminder that racism's consequences extend far beyond its direct targets. That slap on Flight 447 could have broken my spirit, Diana reflects, her voice carrying hard-won wisdom. Instead, it became the catalyst for an entire industry transformation. Madison didn't just assault my face, she awakened a movement that has protected millions of travelers from discrimination. The airline industry has embraced Diana's reforms completely. Discrimination complaints have dropped 73% across all major carriers. 18 airlines have implemented comprehensive bias training programs. Over 6,000 employees have been terminated for discriminatory behavior, sending clear messages about accountability. But here's what I need you to understand, Diana continues, her tone growing more urgent. Change doesn't happen automatically. It requires people like you to take action when you witness injustice. She leans forward, speaking directly to viewers with passionate intensity. Madison Wright thought she had power over me because of my race. But real power isn't about putting others down. It's about lifting them up. When you see discrimination happening, will you be a bystander or will you be the change? Call to action. If this story moved you, I need you to do 3 specific things right now, Diana says, her voice carrying the authority that has transformed an entire industry. First, share this video immediately. Tag 3 friends who need to see this story. Post it on every social platform you use. The more people who understand racism's true cost, the faster we can eliminate it from our workplaces. Second, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We're exposing injustice and celebrating when good people stand up for what's right. You'll get alerts for every new story of justice served. Third, comment below and tell me, have you ever witnessed workplace discrimination and stayed silent? What will you do differently next time? Your story could inspire someone else to find their courage. Diana's expression grows more serious as she delivers her final challenge. Here's the uncomfortable truth I need you to face. Every time you witness discrimination and say nothing, you become complicit in that injustice. Every time you laugh at a racist joke or ignore biased behavior, you give it permission to continue. Final provocative question. Madison Wright's hatred cost her everything: her career, her freedom, her son's future. She chose racism over gratitude and prejudice over her child's education. But what about you? Diana stands and walks to her window, looking out at the diverse city below. When you see someone being treated unfairly because of their race, religion, or background, you have a choice to make. Will you be the person who speaks up, or will you be the person who looks away? Because here's what I learned from that slap. Silence isn't neutral. Silence is complicity, and complicity is always a choice. The final image shows Diana boarding Flight 447, the same route where everything began, now staffed by a diverse crew trained in dignity and respect. Passengers of every background board with confidence, knowing they'll be treated as human beings deserve. What choice will you make?